Welcome back, guys. I know it's been a long time since I last posted my video on YouTube, but I am back and we are going to go over the global history and geography regions from January 2014. So, just a review. The regions has 3 parts. I know it seems really scary because you really have to know a lot of history for this one, but I'll tell you why it's not. It's really not that difficult and anyone can pass it. So part 1 contains 50 multiple choice questions. So, and it's really easy because the answer is going to be right in front of you. So you're going to have a question, you're going to have 4 choices, and even if you're not completely sure about how to answer a particular question, you can use the process of elimination to increase your chances of getting the right answer. Never leave any question blank. That's the worst thing that you can do for that part. It's really not that challenging because even if you forgot something about a particular topic, when you read the answers, sometimes you're going to remember it. And that's why it really helps to study for the regions. Part 2 is going to have a thematic essay question, and that is the most challenging part of the global history regions, because you really have to know your history for this one. And if you don't know your history, you're not going to do well on a thematic essay question, even if your essay writing skills are exceptionally good. And by the way, your essay writing skills have to be good for the regions as well. If you don't know how to organize your essay, you're not going to do well on the global regions. But on the thematic essay question, you're going to be given a historical topic to work with, and you're going to be given several choices, but you still have to know your history. And we're going to go over how to do a good thematic essay question. And part 3 it's a little bit easier than part 2. It's going to have the documents, so sometimes you could be given a political cartoon, sometimes they could give you a map question, sometimes they could give you a short passage, and followed by a set of questions for which you're required to write very short answers. So it's really easy because the answers are right in front of you. DBQ part is, from my experience, most of my students never had any trouble with DBQ, but we're still going to go over it. And the last one is the DBQ essay, which is easier than a thematic essay because you have documents to work with. You can use the information from those documents, and you have to refer to those documents to write a really good essay. So I know the region seems really scary, but it's not. And we're going to go over it topic by topic, question by question, part by part, and you're going to do well. So let's go, guys. Alright, question number 1. So we're given 3 quotes, so let's go over them. First quote says, "Price of oil hits record high." Second quote, "Tribes fight over control of natural resources." Third quote, it says, "Government rations good for the duration of the war." So these headlines all relate to economic concept of what? Well, think about it. If the price of oil hits record high, tribes fight for control of natural resources. That means you can make a lot of money off of natural resources, off of oil, because it is a natural resource. And tribes fight over control of those natural resources so they could get rich, right? And third quote says, "Government rations goods," because the only time government is going to ration goods is when it doesn't have a lot of them for the duration of the war, because in times of war, a lot of those goods, the food has to be sent to front lines, to soldiers, so they could eat. And it's really the only choice that matters. Well, let's go over those choices. Is it overproduction? No. Because if there was overproduction, tribes would not fight for the control of natural resources. There would be plenty of it, so we can cross that one out immediately. Is it interdependence? No, because interdependence basically means that one group of people is dependent on another one, which has nothing to do with the question. Entrepreneurship? Absolutely not. No one is trying to start a business here. No one trying to become an entrepreneur. I mean, it's scarcity. There's a scarcity of resources. There isn't a lot of resources. It's an easy question. Easy answer. Question number 2. Which nation is located on a peninsula? Well, before we read the choices, let's go over what is a peninsula. Peninsula basically is a body of land which is surrounded by water on 3 sides, which is different from an island, because an island has to be surrounded by water on all of its sides. And is it Brazil? That's the first choice that they are giving us? No, absolutely not. Brazil is in South America. It's not a peninsula. Is it Philippines? No. Is it Saudi Arabia? Yes. Is it Austria? No. A country in Europe? No. Philippines, a set of islands? No. But Saudi Arabia, when it comes to Saudi Arabia, it's a peninsula. If you look at the map that's in front of you, it shows the country of Saudi Arabia, and you can see that it's surrounded by water on all 3 of its sides. There is the Persian Gulf to its right. There is the Arabian Sea, and there's the Red Sea. So Saudi Arabia fits the definition of peninsula. So it's an easy question, easy answer, but you really have to know your geography for this one. It's called global history and geography regions for a reason, because as much as you have to know your history, you gotta know a little bit of geography to get a good grade on this regions. Alright, question number 3. And I could be mispronouncing some of those terms, so bear with me, but let's see. The Indus, Ganges, and Brahmaputra were important to ancient India because they were what? Is it 1. High mountain ranges that protected India from invasion? Is it 2. Great rivers that flow through India's fertile northern plain? Is it 3. Aryan gods to whom the priests prayed for rain? Or is it 4. Ruling dynasties that united the people of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro? Alright, so the only choice that makes any kind of sense is 2, because these 3 are rivers, great rivers that flow through India's fertile northern plain. And I have a map. I'm sorry, it's not the best map, but it's one of the few good maps that I could find. And it does show India, northern India, not the entire India. And if you look at the left side of this map, you'll see the word Indus, which is a river in India. Then you would see Ganges and Brahmaputra. Alright, so the rivers. If you know your geography, you'll do well on your regions. So, let's continue. Question number 4. What was one of the most important contributions of the Greek city-state of Athens? So when you think of Athens, right away, even before looking at the answers, you have to think about its contributions in arts, and democracy, culture, architecture. So let's read the choices. Is it 1. Development of direct democracy? Of course it is. Of course it is. But let's read the other choices just to be sure. Is it the fusion of a monotheistic belief system? No, monotheistic. When you see monotheistic, it's belief in one God. It's Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Is it 3, promotion of equality for all humans? Absolutely not. Or is it 4, the creation of a writing system using hieroglyphics? It's Athens, it's not Egypt. So, right away, it's 1. Direct democracy. This is when citizens could vote on government's decisions directly. So, this system was quite revolutionary for ancient city-state of Athens. And in fact, it was very similar to how when you study United States history, you're going to learn that during the early times, when this country was created, it was the same type of system. Women, slaves, and non-citizens had no real say in the government. Only the rich men owned land. Very, very similar. But for Athens, this was quite revolutionary. So let's talk about question number 5. Which belief system was the basis for civil service exams during the Han, Tang, and Song dynasties? Is it 1, legalism? Is it 2, Taoism? Is it 3, Buddhism? Or is it 4, Confucianism? It's Confucianism. And what is Confucianism? Let's go over it so we don't get confused about it. So Confucianism, social order. Confucians wrote the book called Analects. So it was China's official philosophy for thousands of years. So without going to specifics, let's talk about his 5 relationships. So what Confucius did was that he opposed legalism or any other harsh philosophies. He believed that there must be a philosophy of mutual respect. So respect your elders. Absolutely. Poor must respect the rich. That was the second relationship. Respect your rulers. And wife must obey her husband. And neighbors, members of community, must respect each other. So it was based on mutual respect. So it was the basis for civil service exams to get given during Han, Tang, and Song dynasties. Really easy questions, and you can get it. Alright, so you're always going to get those map questions. And it says right here that you should base your answer to question 6 on the map below and your knowledge of social studies. Alright, so I would argue that this question is so easy that you only need to know your geography to answer it correctly. Because I'm looking at the map, it says Charlemagne's Empire, 1814 AD. Alright, so I'm looking at the map, and right away I know that it's France. It's part of France, it's part of Germany, because, I see England, I see Spain, I know it's Western Europe because it says Atlantic Ocean. It's part of France. It says Paris. It says Paris. And if you go a little bit eastwards, you would get into a part of Germany. Of course, Germany was not a unified country, but let's see. Question number 6. Charlemagne was the king of Franks. So be very careful with that one. Not a French monarch in terms of, Louis XIV, but he was a king of Franks who united, large parts of Europe. But Charlemagne's 9th century empire covered Territorial, which today would include the countries of course it's 3, France and Germany, but let's read the choices. Is it Poland and Russia? No, Poland and Russia would go much more eastwards. Like you see where it says Slavs, that's where you have Poland, and even further eastward, you have Russia. Is it to Spain and Portugal? No, because you see Spain, it says Spain, it right here on the map. It's not part of the empire. And Portugal is not even on the map. You would go further south. Is it Ireland and United Kingdom? No, just no. It's a really easy question. And to answer this type of question, you don't need to know anything about Charlemagne himself. You just need to know your map. And this is the map of Europe, map of Western Europe. The map of Western Europe today looks well, not political map, of course, politically not, but geographically, in terms of land masses, it looks today the same as it did back then. But of course, politically, you had new countries, you had borders moved. But geographically, it looks the same today. So if you know your geography, if you know your maps, you have no trouble with question number 6. Alright, let's move on. Alright, so, fact and opinion. Remember, guys, when you used to go to middle school and elementary school, and your teacher would ask you a question about what's a fact and what's an opinion? Give me some examples. Yeah, that's how easy this question is. So, which statement about the Islamic Golden Age is a fact rather than an opinion? So, it's a fact and opinion question. It's one of those questions that, you were asked in elementary and middle school. You don't need to know anything about the Islamic Golden Age to answer this question correctly. You just need to look for keywords and phrases that are going to tell you that it's a fact rather than an opinion. You should never get these types of questions wrong. You simply shouldn't. So, let's look at the choices. Is it 1, Islamic medicine was more advanced than Chinese medicine? That's an opinion. Keyword is more. Is it 2, poetry and literature were more important fields of study for Muslims than was mathematics? That's an opinion because it has the keyword more. Is it 3, knowledge of astronomy was used by Muslims to fulfill religious obligations? That's absolutely true, and it's not an opinion, it's a fact. It's a historical fact. Islamic Golden Age, contributed a lot to human civilization, to global civilization everywhere. In terms of math, science, when you think about medicine, even by preserving ancient Greek and Roman culture. So, because Europeans lost a lot of their own knowledge during the Dark Ages. And they did get it back during the Renaissance and after the Dark Ages, but they owe a lot of it to Islamic scholars who preserved it. But getting back to this question, it's 3. Knowledge of astronomy was used by Muslims to fulfill religious obligations. It's absolutely right. So right away, that's 3, but just to, make sure, let's read number 4. Question number 4, it says, Islamic philosophies relied less, once again, less, it's an opinion, on Greek philosophical masters than on Indian philosophical masters. Really easy question. Let's move on to the question number 8. The early Eastern European Slavic civilization. So when you think about Slavic civilization, right away you should think about Russia, Ukraine, Poland, all those Slavic civilizations. At Kiev, adopted the Eastern Orthodox religion, the Cyrillic alphabet, and certain styles of art and architecture as a result of what? Is the one wars with Japan? With Japan? No, absolutely not. Japan does not use the Cyrillic alphabet. Alright, it's a conquest by Mongol invaders, which in fact did happen. At one point in Russian history, but it has nothing to do with the question. Is it 3? Visits to Western European countries. It happened later on, when Peter and Catherine visited Europe and sort of westernized Russia, but again, has nothing to do with the question. It is 4, trade with the Byzantine Empire, which heavily influenced early Slavic civilization. So, when you think of when you see Byzantine on the regions, I would argue right away to think about Russia. Think about early Slavic civilizations. Think about, Kiev, Cyrillic alphabet, Eastern Orthodox religion. Right away, Byzantines. Right. Question number 9. China, Korea, and Japan share cultural similarities in part due to their 1. Clashes with Russian imperialists, 2. Shared river systems, 3. Contacts through trade, or 4. Unification under Mongol rule. First of all, Mongols never conquered Japan, but the answer is 3. It's obvious. Contacts through trade, and you shouldn't spend too much time on this type of question. It's obvious because of their location. Question number 10. The development of banking system during the commercial revolution in Western Europe was significant because it 1. Provided capital resources to merchants for investment, 2. Allowed peasant farmers to finance the construction of new homes, 3. Enabled the proletariat. First of all, when you say proletariat, you're talking about communism. And this is commercial revolution. You can eliminate this question right away. Proletariat to challenge the bourgeoisie. That's a good one. So, is it 4? Created pensions for retired workers. It's 1. Provided capital resources for merchants. To merchants for investment. If you want to start a business, you need money. And during those early years of commercial revolution, banks gave out loans to people, resources for merchants, for investments. And banks could also, be some of the places where merchants could invest. I know I'm not an expert on economics, but that's generally how it works, I think. So, number 1 is the right answer. Question number 11. In general, which direction did the Black Death spread during the 14th century? Is it 1, from Europe to Americas? Is it 2, from Africa to Southeast Asia? Is it 3, from Asia to Europe? Or is it 4, from Americas to Asia? It's 3, from Asia to Europe. In the year 1347, some of the ships arrived in Italy, merchant ships that came from Asia, and they brought the Black Death, also known as bubonic plague, to Europe. It was the disease carried by flies, on backs of rats. And Europe's sanitary conditions of the time were not the best. Basically, you would see a lot of garbage on the street of Europe during that time. It was not the best. So it helped spread the disease. And it's still debatable, but it killed about 1/3 to 1/2. It might have killed 1/3 to 1/2 of all European populations of all of Europe. And, it's a disease, and if it happened today, we have antibiotics to combat that disease. Back then, people didn't have that medicine. People didn't know what to do with it. They didn't know what caused the disease. So, They didn't know how it spread, so that helped the disease to spread with a tremendous speed. I mean, it basically destroyed most of Europe. I mean, not most, but a large part of Europe. A third to a half of all European population. I mean, that's ridiculous. Alright, let's move on. Question number 12. One result of the Protestant Reformation was, is it 1, fewer challenges to the church authority? Is it 2, a decline in religious unity in Western Europe? Is it 3, the disbanding of the Jesuit order? Or is it 4, a weakening of the Inquisition? Now, the Protestant Reformation always shows up on a global regions in one way or another. Now, it could show up as a multiple choice question, just like you have here, or it could show up as one of the topics in either a thematic or the DBQ part of the regions. So you have to know this topic. It always shows up on the regions. So, Protestant Reformation, I'm not going to go into too many details about it, but it started in approximately 1517 and it lasted until 1648. So the Protestant Reformation was a movement. It was a movement that originally aimed at reforming some of the abuses of the Catholic Church, such as selling of indulgences, basically I call them tickets to heaven. Basically, if a person did something bad, an indulgence was a paper that he could buy from the Catholic Church, and it would guarantee salvation. And also, the corruption within the church that was happening at the time, because prior to the Protestant Reformation, the Catholic Church was very powerful, had a lot of authority. But this movement led to the split between Catholics and Protestants, and one of the leaders of the Protestant Reformation that you have to know about is Martin Luther. Who wrote. You'll remember about his 95 Theses, 95 demands that he nailed to the church door. But yeah, that is the answer. It's a decline in religious unity in Western Europe. So, question 13. For which achievement is Suleiman the Magnificent best known? Alright, so right away you look at his name, and we can eliminate some of the choices just like that. So, question number 1, building the Dome of Rock in Jerusalem? No, he didn't do that. 2, spreading Christianity into the Balkan Peninsula? Suleiman the Magnificent. Right away, he was not Christian. You can eliminate 2. 3, conquering the Russian capital of Moscow? No one has ever been able to do that in recorded history. Napoleon tried, Hitler tried, they all failed. Or is it 4? Uniting the Ottoman Empire under the efficient government structure? That is correct. Alright, let's move on. Base your answer to question 14 on the passage below and your knowledge of social studies. So sometimes you're going to get these types of questions where you have, short passages. So let's read it. In the 1930s, Sylvanus G. Morley of Harvard, probably the most celebrated Marxist of his day, argued for what is still the best known theory. The Maya collapsed because they overshot the carrying capacity of their environment. They exhausted their resource base, began to die of starvation and thirst, and fled their cities en masse, leaving them a silent warning of the perils of ecological hubris, overconfidence. Charles C. Mann. You always want to read the bottom part. 1491. New Relations of the Americas before Columbus. Alright, so according to this passage, what was the major question Morley was trying to answer about the Mayans in the 1930s? Alright, so is it 1, why did the Mayans abandon their cities? 2, what is the structure of the Mayan governments? 3, how did religious beliefs affect the Mayan economy? Was it 4, which neighboring city-state conquered the Mayas? Of course it's 1. Why did they abandon their cities? You don't need to know anything about the Mayans to answer this kind of questions. These types of questions, because because the answer is right there in that passage. It says right here, they exhausted their resource base, began to die of starvation and thirst, and fled their cities en masse. Question number 1 is the only answer. Answer number 1 is the only one that makes sense. Why did the Mayas abandon their cities? Alright, question number 15. Which technological development enabled European navigators to determine their location during the Age of Exploration? Aha, the Age of Exploration. That's when Europeans started to explore beyond their shores, create colonies, extend their spheres of influence. Of course it's astrolabe too. It's a very easy question because it's the only tool that's used for navigation. So sometimes you're going to get these types of easy questions. Let's move on. Question number 16. The encounter occurred as a result of European explorers crossing the 1. Atlantic Ocean, 2. Sahara Desert, 3. Andes Mountains, or 4. The Mediterranean Sea. So to answer this question correctly, you have to know a little bit of history and a little bit of geography. So the encounter occurred when Europeans met the native people of the New World. So to get to the New World from Europe, they had to have crossed the Atlantic Ocean, which I labeled as number 1 on this map. They could not have crossed the Sahara Desert because that's the northern part of Africa. 3. Andes Mountains, South America? No. Or is it 4, the Mediterranean Sea? It's a very easy question. And for the actual Regents exam, you have to know, I not only labeled those 4 questions on that map, but for the actual Regents exam, you have to know all the oceans, every continent, and you have to know several countries where they are located at, or where located at, depending on the historical time period they're talking about. Definitely have to know the river systems. But it's going to be very difficult to get a good grade without knowing a lot about not a lot, but without knowing something about geography. Because it's called the Regents, Global Regents History and Geography region. Global History and Geography regions for a reason. So question number 17. In colonial Spanish America, which system was developed by the Spanish to support the plantation agriculture? Alright, so is it 1, barter? Is it 2, encomienda? Is it 3, domestic? Or is it 4, guild? Very easy question. It's 2, encomienda. What is encomienda? It's basically a system of slavery where the Spanish enslaved the native people to work on their plantation systems. It was a very race-centered system of encomienda. Number 1 makes no sense because barter is exchange of goods and services, or goods and goods. Yeah. So, for example, in a system of barter, which was very common in prehistory or early human history. One person could exchange, a goat for a cow, exchanging goods for goods or goods for services. So basically, in a system of barter, you exchange goods for goods or goods for services without using money. So you don't use money in barter. Okay, so question number 18. What happened in Russia as a result of actions taken by Peter the Great? Is it 1. Russia was weakened by French invasions? No. Answer number 2. Catholicism was adopted as the state religion? No. 3. Duma was reformed and serfs were freed? No. It's 4. Russia borrowed Western ideas and expanded its territories. So what Peter did was, Peter was a very unusual leader in Russia because he looked at the West. He wanted to westernize Russia. So when you see Peter the Great on the Regents, think of westernization. He wanted to westernize Russia. And he borrowed a lot of Western ideas. And he also wanted to expand Russia. If you looked at the early Russian history, it's very similar to early American history. When you're going to learn about U.S. history, in terms of there were a series of expansions. And Peter wanted to westernize Russia. He built a powerful navy that could compete with European navies. He improved its military overall. He made sure Russia became a Western country, because unlike England and France, Russia was always isolated from the rest of Western Europe. And Peter made sure that it doesn't happen. Question number 19. Which heading best completes the partial outline on British history below? So, the British history. When it comes to the British history, I feel like many schools kind of skip over this topic and don't cover it as much as they should be covering it. And as a result, many students, from my experience, don't know that much about the British history. I'm guilty of that myself. I remember when I used to go to high school. British history was one of my weaknesses in high school. So I had to catch up on it, when I went to college. But the partial outline below is one of the types of questions that you're gonna see on the Regents. So let's take a look at this partial outline. A, it says Magna Carta. B, glorious revolution. And C, the Bill of Rights, not to be confused with the U.S. Bill of Rights. So it has nothing to do with the 10 Amendments. So let's take a look at the choices that they're giving us. Is it 1, the rise of absolutism? Is it 2, the beginning of socialism? Is it 3, challenges to papal power? Or is it 4, evolution to parliamentary democracy? It's 4, evolution of parliamentary democracy. And let's go over why, because it's British history. We gotta know a little bit about the British history. So the Magna Carta, 1215. It was an agreement between King John and English barons. So it was the first document that limited the power of the monarch. So the monarchy was still kind of an absolute monarchy, but this document limited the power of the monarch. So let's take a look at what it did. So church rights were protected. It also protects barons from illegal imprisonment and limited the power to, limited payments to the crown. So what happened was King John was at war with the English barons, and they forced him to sign this document that limited his power. So although he still had a lot of power, his power was no longer, absolute in terms of unlimited control. But make no mistake about it, it was still an absolute monarchy. Until the Glorious Revolution of 1688, which overthrew King James II of England by English parliamentarians, and it increased the power of the parliament. And that's when you see the change from absolute to constitutional monarchy. And it also installed King William III of England and Merriest II of England, which led directly to the English Bill of Rights of 1689. Not to be confused with US Bill of Rights, which is the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. So, if you get this type of question on the Regents, let's say it's going to be part of a thematic part of the Regents, let's suppose it will be. It might not be, but in case you get this type of topic on the Regents, especially don't confuse it with U.S. history. And if you're gonna write about the American Bill of Rights in a thematic part of the Regents, you're gonna fail it. You're going to fail the Regents. And the reason I'm saying this is because it has happened in the past. You're not gonna believe the types of answers that teachers get on the Regents. But it's the English Bill of Rights. It limited the power of the monarchy. Now, when you're going to study the U.S. history, you're going to learn that, the colonists, when they had their revolution, they argued that their rights were violated under the English Bill of Rights, but we're talking about global history here. So, it's the English Bill of Rights, 1689. Question number 20. Why is the Enlightenment considered a turning point in world history? So what is a turning point? I had this question asked to me by one of my students the other day. What is a turning point? Well, a turning point is the key event in world history, one of the most important events in global history. So, is it 1, the factory system was used to mass produce goods? No, that's Industrial Revolution. That's when you're talking about, the 19th century. It started in England because they had abundance of coal and iron, abundance of natural resources. So it has nothing to do with the question. We can cross that one out. Is it 2, Martin Luther broke away from the Roman Catholic Church? We just talked about it earlier. And it's the Reformation, but it has nothing to do with this question. Is it 3, Europeans changed their thinking about the role of the government? Absolutely yes. Enlightenment. When you think of the word enlightenment, or when somebody is enlightened, it means they're smart. They have to see the light of knowledge. So it is 3. And it's not 4. Because 4 is talking about the Columbian Exchange. And, that's when, products were exchanged. Not just products, culture were exchanged between, Americas and Europe. Old world and new world. But it has nothing to do with this question. Alright, let's move on. Question number 21. One way in which Robespierre and Louis XVI of France are similar is that both, 1. were removed from power during the French Revolution, 2. adopted the ideas of the Congress of Vienna, 3. implemented policies of religious tolerance, or 4. decreased government control of the economy. This is a very easy question. The answer is 1. were removed from power during the French Revolution. So when you see those names, Robespierre and Louis XVI of France, you have to think about the French Revolution. So, because those names are associated with the French Revolution. And hopefully, guys, you did your homework and know about the French Revolution, know about the 3 states, the monarchy, the clergy, and everybody else, which was about 95% of people that paid all the taxes and were very unhappy with the monarchy. But I'm not going to go into too many details about it. So the answer is 1. Question number 22. One way in which Toussaint Louverture, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, Simon Bolivar, and José de San Martin are similar is that both their were is it one supporters of mercantile policies? No, when you see mercantile policies, basically it's a policy of trade that benefits the mother country. Is it 2 leaders of independence movements? Is it 3 democratically elected leaders, or is it 4 industrial labor reformers? The answer is 2 leaders of independence movements. So I made a little note. So Toussaint Louverture, that's Haiti, Simon Bolivar, Venezuela, and Jose de San Martin, Argentina. So during the 19th century, I think, 19th century, there were a lot of independence movements. There are many of them in Latin America. And those were some of the leaders whom you have to know for your regions. Alright, question number 23. Which geographic feature most aided England during the Industrial Revolution? Oh, that you have to know for the regions. So first of all, Industrial Revolution. What do you know about the Industrial Revolution? So during the 19th century, so think about 19th century, that's when it really kicked off in England. It did start in England. I'm going to tell you why. Because England had a lot of coal and iron resources. So they had lots of natural resources. But besides that, they had something else. Which leads us to our questions. Is it 1, desert climate in England? Come on now, of course you know it's wrong. Is it 2, natural harbors? 3, mountainous terrain? 4, monsoon winds? Now, first of all, you have to know that England is an island. It has great natural harbors, which led it to develop one of the best navies in history, and which helped it with trade. And I would argue that the fact that England had such unique geography is, that fact is one of the reasons why we all speak English today. 2, natural harbors is the right answer. Very easy question. Question number 24. Mass starvation in Ireland in the 1840s led directly to the, is it 1, formation of communes, 2, granting of independence, 3, migration of people overseas, or is it 4, usage of petrochemical fertilizers? Alright, so 1840s, Ireland. There was something known as the Irish potato famine. I'm not going to go into too many details about it, but basically people in Ireland were starving and they had to move. They had to go to a country that had food. So many Irish people went to the United States, and they probably saw the Lady Liberty, Statue of Liberty. Once they got here, of course by ships. That's 3. Migration of people overseas. And many Irish people settled, at least initially, on the East Coast. So in the areas of New York, New England, there are many descendants of those Irish immigrants. Alright, so question number 25. One major reason European countries engaged in imperialism in the 19th century was to 1. Gain better understanding of the unknown territories, 2. Ease tensions with their rivals, 3. Develop treatments for diseases, or 4. Obtain markets for their manufactured goods. Alright, so what is imperialism? When a country engages in imperialism, it wants to dominate weaker countries. So in imperialism, a stronger country dominates weaker ones. And they want to make money. So gotta remember that for the Regents. And the answer is 4. Obtain markets for their manufactured goods. So they would manufacture goods in Europe and they would sell it elsewhere. And they wanted to benefit, they intended it to benefit their countries, their economies. For example, England engaged in imperialism in India, many European countries engaged in imperialism in Africa at the time, China, Japan, and so forth. Well, let's go to question 26. Speaking of Japan, one way in which Emperor Meiji of Japan and Kemal Ataturk of Turkey are similar is that they both 1. Crushed secessionist movements, 2. Worked to modernize their nations, 3. Conquered eastern neighboring territories, or 4. Protested against economic sanctions. Well, Emperor Meiji of Japan, there was something during his time period known as the Meiji Restoration. That's when Japan really modernized their economy. Same thing with Kemal Ataturk in Turkey. They wanted to modernize their nations, make them more modern, so they could compete with Europeans. Very easy question, very easy answers. Very easy answer. Alright, let's move on. I love these types of questions. Base your answer to question 27 on the poster below and your knowledge of social studies. So sometimes you're gonna get these types of questions when you have a poster and you have to figure out its meaning. So you have a poster, it says, women of Britain say, go! Get out of here! Go! So you see a bunch of soldiers in the background and women cheering them on, And as you know, if women say go, you gotta go. And source poster by E. Kelly and Susan. Well, I gotta read the source. Susan R. Grazel. It says women in the First World War. So even if you don't know the time period, don't ignore what's written on the bottom, because that's very important, because it says First World War. But you could answer this question even without reading it, but you never know what kind of question you're going to get on the Regents. So, question 27. This World War I poster is an example of, once again, World War I. Is it 1, diversity? No. It's not diversity. 2, dissent? Absolutely not. 3, toleration? No. 4, it's propaganda. Propaganda is when a government is trying to influence public opinion through pictures, through, well, modern times it's the media. Personally, most times I don't even watch the news anymore. I mean, I follow the news, but I make my own decisions on which news to accept and which ones to reject, but I don't really watch the news on television like I used to in the past. Probably because most of the news right now contains this propaganda. They won't influence public opinion. So, that's another example of propaganda. Women of Britain say go. It's a pro-war propaganda. They want to, tell young men at the time to go to war. Because, women want you to go to war. That's why you gotta go to war. So, it's one of these questions. Really, it's really easy as long as you look at the picture, read what it says. You should have no problem answering these types of questions. Question number 28. Which development occurred in Germany as a result of the terms imposed by the Treaty of Versailles? Alright, so is it 1, Soviet occupation? Is it 2, political instability? Is it 3, overseas expansion? Or is it 4, economic prosperity? The answer is 2, political instability. It's an easy question, but you guys have to know about the Treaty of Versailles. Because it's very important for the Regents. So that treaty actually ended World War I. So, Treaty of Versailles ended World War I, and was a terrible and very foolish decision by Europeans. And it was actually one of the causes of World War II. Why? Well, think about it. It blamed Germany for the war, for starting World War I. Even though Germany didn't actually start it. As you know, World War I started with assassination of Archduke Ferdinand. But nevertheless, Germany was blamed for the war. And it had to pay back big money in reparations. Approximately about 30 billion bucks. So, big money. Germany could not have big military, and Germany had to surrender some of its land. As you know, a lot of Germans were really, really upset about it. And the economy actually didn't do really well. Partly because of what happened in World War I, but these conditions gave rise to radical elements within the German society, such as the Nazis. Because people were really upset, they were really peed off, so to speak. Nazis found a lot of audience in Germany to whom they could appeal by stating that these terms, the Treaty of Versailles, were unfair to Germany. So, political instability. Which is why I think, and many historians also think, that Treaty of Versailles was a terrible decision by Europeans. I mean, they wanted to punish Germany because they didn't like Germany. But World War II started. One of the causes of World War II was this. Alright, question number 29. The original goal of Pan-Africanism was to do what? Is it 1, demand democratic reforms to encourage ethnic rivalry? 3, promote united Africa? Or 4, divide Africa into separate countries? The answer is 3. It's an easy question. Pan-Africa, it means united Africa. Alright, let's move on. Question number 30. The establishment of independent countries of Czechoslovakia, Hungary, and Yugoslavia was a result of, is it 1, the Franco-Prussian War? Is it 2, the Berlin Conference? Is it 3, World War I? Or is it 4, the Munich Pact? It's a really easy question. And the answer is 3, World War I. Why? As you know, Germany, after losing World War I, they had to give up some of its land. And, there was a whole bunch of land division going on in Europe. And you had these new countries popping up. There were Czechoslovakia, Hungary, and Yugoslavia. There were some of them. And as you know, Only one of these countries still exists. Its name is Hungary. Czechoslovakia and Yugoslavia, both of these countries no longer exist. They've been broken up into several other countries, but that's another story. That happened, after towards the end of the Cold War, once we started dealing with the Soviet Union, but that's another story. That's the answer for number 30 is World War One. Okay, question number 31. Which goal was the most important to the Indian nationalist movement? Is it 1, independence from British rule? Is it 2, establishment of laissez-faire economy? Is it 3, forming a totalitarian state? Or is it 4, expansion of territory? The answer is 1. It's really easy. Independence from British rule. They didn't want to be a British colony anymore. They wanted to be an independent country. Laissez-faire economy, that's a hands-off economy. That's when we deal with capitalism, free market. It has nothing to do with totalitarian state. That's, when you deal with Soviet Union. That's one example, especially when it comes to the reign, the government of Stalin, where government has total control over everything. It has nothing to do with the Indian nationalist movement. And India had no intention to expand. So, number 1 is the easy answer to this. Question number 32. Which geographic factor? So when we deal with geography, we're dealing with land. Alright, so question number 32. Which geographic factor was most significant in helping the Soviet Union withstand German attacks in World War II? Is it 1, the Ural Mountains served as barrier to advancing German armies? Is it 2, distance and harsh winters disrupted German supply lines? Is it 3, extensive food producing areas kept Soviet armies well fed? Right. Or is it 4, numerous ports along the Arctic Sea allowed for refueling of Soviet transport ships? Alright. So the answer is 2. Distance and harsh winters disrupted German supply lines. One thing you guys gotta know about Russia is, during winter it can get really, really cold. And Germans were not used to that type of weather. It can get cold in Germany as well. Germany is, but not as cold as Russia. And of course, another reason is distance. Remember, all was the time before you could use airplanes to bring supplies to the front lines. Certainly there were planes back then, but that was just the beginning of aviation. The way the Germans brought supplies to the front lines, and just about anyone did. One of the most common ways was to use the railroad. And think about railroads. It's a long distance from Germany to, let's say, to Russia. The distance can be really challenging to overcome. And what Russians did, what the Soviets also did, they blew up the railroad tracks, and it slowed down Germany's supply lines significantly. So distance and harsh winters disrupted German supply lines. And when we go back to the 19th century, Napoleon also faced the reality of the Russian winter. But alright, so the answer is 2, distance and harsh winter disrupted the German supply lines. Question number 33. Which geographic region has the greatest number of members in the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, also known as Opec? Is it 1, South America? Is it 2, Sub-Saharan Africa? Is it 3, Southeast Asia? Or is it 4, Middle East? The answer is 4, the Middle East. The reason is simple. Middle East has the most oil. And OPEC is the organization created to control the supply and demand, basically the price of oil. If when these countries agreed to cut down on exporting oil to the market, the prices usually go up. When they pump more oil, the prices usually go down. It's supply and demand. And they did it so they could have a lot of control over the world, over politics, and also over how much money they're making. Opec, the Middle East. Alright, so question number 34. The economic policies of Mikhail Gorbachev of the Soviet Union and Deng Xiaoping of China included: is it 1. Elements of capitalism? Is it 2. Boycott on foreign products? Is it 3. A one-child policy? Or is it 4. The reliance on agricultural self-sufficiency? The answer is 1. Elements of capitalism. I mean, think about it, guys. How many of you have anything in your house that's not made in China? Let's put it that way. That's not made in China. I'm pretty sure that, if you have anything that runs on electricity, chances are, most likely, it's made in China. I know most of the electronics in my house is made in China. And that's due to Deng Xiaoping. He decided to focus on consumer economy, specifically exporting it. And he allowed elements of capitalism, and which allowed China to become an economic power it is today. With Mikhail Gorbachev, he was not as successful because the Soviet Union collapsed, and I think partly as a result of his policies, because his policy of perestroika, which was reform, was not successful. I think it was rushed and a little bit. He also but his intention was to create sort of like an prosperous economic country. But it's elements of capitalism, 1. And when it comes to one-child policy, I don't think even China has it anymore, but it was China, because they had a lot of people and they wanted to reduce the size of their population. Alright, question number 35. What is the main reason refugees fled Rwanda in the 1990s? Is it 1. Ethnic conflict? Is it 2. Expansion of the Sahel? Is it 3. Devastation from the earthquake? Or is it 4. War tensions? Guys, if you ever see the movie called Hotel Rwanda, I really recommend it. It's a good movie. It shows that time period really well. But it's an ethnic conflict. I believe it was Hutus and Tutsis. But ethnic conflict, especially in the 90s. Very brutal. Alright. Alright guys, so question 36. Occasionally you're going to have those diagrams and on your regions. So base your answer to question 36 on a diagram below and your knowledge of social studies. So you see a diagram, it looks really complex, and it's really not. What you need to do with the diagram when you see it is basically read it. So it says corporate headquarters on top, supplies, Italy, South Korea, Russia, Colombia, raw materials, US, Egypt, South Africa, Canada, manufacturing and production centers, US, Japan, UK, France, Germany, Mexico. Products and services, you see a whole bunch of services, and sales, where it's being finally sold. Africa, Asia, Australia, Europe, North America, South America. And you see, the chart was made in 2005. I don't know how relevant it is to 2017, but you might see a similar chart on your regions. It just rearranged differently. But which concept is being shown in 2005 diagram? I don't think it's that relevant for 2017 because, lots of things are being made in Asia right now. But back in 2005, lots of things were also made in Asia. Specifically China, but I don't know, that's the diagram. Is it 1 recession? No. Is it 2 urbanization? No. Urbanization has to do with cities. Is it 3 socialism? Absolutely not. It's globalization. It's 4 globalization. We're becoming a global economy. Back in 2008, I remember when we had a little recession going on, it although it occurred in the United States, impact was felt globally. So we live in a very globalized society. It's impossible to just be isolated from the rest of the world. It's a globalized society. We're dependent on each other. Globalization. Definitely. You might not see this chart on your new regions, but you might see a question about globalization because it's still relevant. Alright, question 37. What is one way the conflict between India and Pakistan over Kashmir and conflict between the Palestinians and Israelis in the Middle East are similar? Is it 1. Both conflicts concern territorial and religious issues? Is it 2. Hostilities within these regions were provoked by the United Nations? Is it 3. Both conflicts emerged as a result of the breakup of the Soviet Union? Or is it 4. Tensions in these regions were caused by efforts to remain non-aligned? It's such an easy question. You guys should not get this question wrong. If you guys get this question wrong, you don't even belong in a Regents exam. I'm sorry, but that's a really easy question. Because, India and Pakistan and the conflict between Palestinians and Israelis in the Middle East has to do with land. Of course, because it even tells you right there. They're even giving you a hint. India and Pakistan over Kashmir. Kashmir, it's a territory. Right away, that's the answer. Right away. I mean, they even giving you it in a question. And Israelis and Palestinians, when it comes to them, they also disagree a lot about land and religion. Oh, and these were causes of numerous wars throughout human history. So, the answer is 1. So, question number 38. The creation of the European Union, which is EU, and of the North American Free Trade Agreement, which is NAFTA, were efforts to 1. Attain economic benefits through a regional organization. Is it to achieve world peace through military alliances? Is it to reduce resources depletion through economic planning? Or is it 4. Address environmental problems through coordinated research? It's 1. It's sort of like an economic union. Attain economic benefits through a regional organization. So the idea is, if we become friends and remove economic barriers, everyone's going to benefit. That was the idea. So, other choices that you have here make no sense whatsoever. Alright, so let's move on. Alright, so question number 39. It says, you answer to the question 39. Question 39. On a map below, any knowledge of social studies. Alright, so got a map here. It says estimated number of adults and children living with HIV/AIDS as of 2010. And you give me a whole bunch of numbers. In North America, it's 1.3 million. In Eastern and Central Europe, Eastern Europe and Central Asia, it's 1.5 million. Western and Central Europe, it's 840,000 people. I mean, you're given numbers in front of you. You can see them. And let's look at the question. Question number 39. It says that the data on this map suggest that HIV and AIDS is 1 originated in South and Southeastern Asia. Absolutely not. I mean, you can't see where it originated based on the map. Is it 2? It's declining in developing societies. Once again, you can't tell by the map. Is it 3? It requires global cooperation to solve the problem? Of course it does. Because it's a global problem. It's everywhere. It's all over the world. Some regions suffer from it more than others. But if we are ever going to be able to solve this issue, we gotta cooperate. A single country cannot solve it by itself. It doesn't matter how much money, how much resources, how many scientists they have. The only way to solve it is with global cooperation. And of course you have question number 4, which is also wrong. Has been restricted to temperate climates. 3. Now we gotta cooperate to solve this problem. Question number 40. Since 1999, what has been the primary role of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, also known as NATO, in world affairs? Is it 1. Conducting war crime trials? No. Is it 2. Protecting Western Europe from Soviet aggression? Aha. Not bad. I'll talk about it later. Is it 3. Lowering tariffs between member nations? No. Is it 4. Carrying crisis management and peace enforcement tasks? The answer is 4, but the reason I'm saying is because, back in, it happened in 2014, when Russia basically annexed Crimea, which was the region of Ukraine in Eastern Europe, and there's been some debate about whether Russia is involved in Eastern Ukraine as well. So a lot of these Eastern NATO members of Eastern Europe, Ukraine is not a member of NATO, but a lot of other members of NATO, such as Poland, they're really scared of whether Russia is going to attack or not. Me personally, I don't think it will, but a lot of them are scared. And so the NATO has been preparing to counter what's going on over there, to counter a possible Russian attack on countries such as Poland or the Baltic states. So Union Regents might talk about it a little bit more, but the one that I'm talking about right here, in this case the answer is 4, carrying crisis management peace enforcement tasks. But watch out for this question on the New Regents exam, because it might change and reflect what's going on with the politics. So question number 41. Which current global problem was initiated by the development of atomic weapons, which are also known as nuclear weapons? Is it 1. Threats to world peace from unrestricted nuclear proliferation? And it's the right answer. If we're gonna have nukes all over the place, chances are they're gonna, sooner or later, they're probably gonna get used, and we don't want that to happen. And other choices just increase health rates for humans and animals from industrial pollution. 3, elevated carbon dioxide in the atmosphere from to deforestation of the rainforest, or 4, changes in world weather patterns and species habitats due to melting polar ice caps. No, it's 1. Alright guys, let's move on. Guys, it's really unusual that they would put these types of questions this late on a Regents exam, because usually when it comes to global regions, the questions go chronologically from early history to modern times, but we got these 2 questions about ancient history, ancient to modern, but it's there. It should really come up a little bit earlier, but it's there, so we're gonna answer them. So that's a question. So question number 42. The Neolithic revolution is most closely associated with what? Is it 1, using child labor in factories? No, that's industrial revolution. In the 19th century, it started in England because they had a lot of iron and coal, and it spread to other countries, developed countries. But that's not the right answer. To domesticating plants and animals? Yes. When people started domesticating plants and animals, they kind of started to settle down. That's the Neolithic revolution. So 3 and 4 are also wrong. Learning to control fire or develop iron technology has nothing to do with Neolithic revolution. And you guys do need to know what Neolithic revolution is for the Regents. Question number 43 is a little bit tricky. It says, question number 43, which sequence places these laws in the correct chronological order? So, the reason it's tricky is because you're given 4 sets of laws, and even if you get one of them wrong, but if you get another, even if you get one of them right, but to get another one wrong, you could mess up everything. So, you don't want to do that, right? So, let's read them. Question number 1. The Code of Hammurabi, Justinian Code, Napoleonic Code, and 12 tables. This is why it's tricky. The Code of Hammurabi did come first, but the 12 tables came before the Justinian Code. It says Justinian Code, Napoleonic Code, 12 tables. Which is why you can cross out number 1. Is it 2, the Justinian Code? No, it's not the first. Right away, you can cross it out. Is it 3, the Code of Hammurabi, 12 tables, Justinian Code, and Napoleonic Code? Yes. So 3 is the right answer. And 4, 12 tables, Napoleonic Code of Hammurabi, and Justinian Code. That's wrong. So you gotta really be careful with these types of questions. You gotta read all of them and make sure you get every single one of these. Whatever they can give you correct. Says 3. Question number 44. Which philosophy was developed during the Renaissance is associated with a shift in focus away from religious subjects towards more secular subjects? Is it 1, humanism? Is it 2, absolutism? Is it 3, communism? Or is it 4, scholasticism? When it comes to Renaissance, which was really a rebirth of old classical Greek and Roman culture, in one way it was rebirth, in another way it was a time period when people really wanted to learn more about people. So we got a science known as humanism. Not really a science, more of a philosophy, which was a shift away from religious subjects towards more secular one. The philosophy of humanism. Alright, so question number 45. It says, base your answer to question 45 on the statement below and your knowledge of social studies. Alright, so let's read the statement. When you got the statement, read the statement. I conclude then, returning to being feared and loved then, since men at their convenience and fear at convenience of the prince. A wise prince should found himself in what is his, not in what is someone else's. He should only contrive to avoid hatred, as was said. That's really important because he says this statement. It says this statement was taken from a book of. Right away, you should know it's Machiavelli. It's the right answer. Machiavelli was a philosopher who believed it's better to be feared than loved. If you're a ruler, if you're a prince, if you wrote a book about how kings and how monarchs should govern, it's better to be feared than loved. If they love you today, they're gonna hate you tomorrow. So he probably wouldn't disagree. With the 6th great song by the Beatles. But the fear. It's better to be feared than loved. If they love you today, they're gonna hate you tomorrow. They might hate you tomorrow, but if they fear you today, if your subjects are afraid of you, they might not like you, but they're gonna be too scared to rebel. But if they love you today, and they're not really scared of you, if they hate you tomorrow, they're gonna overthrow you. So you gotta really put your fist down, and you gotta govern with an iron fist, so that they're really scared of you. That was Machiavelli's philosophy. Alright, question number 46. One similarity in the rule of Akbar the Great and the rule of Elizabeth I is that both leaders implement policies that encourage its for religious toleration, but let's go over all the choices. Is it 1, compulsory education? No. Is it 2, military disarmament? No. Is it 3? Voter participation? Absolutely not. It's not a democracy. So it's 4. Religious toleration. Easy question, easy answer. Alright, question 47. One way in which the caste system in traditional India and the state system of pre-revolutionary France are similar is that 1. Occupations were attained by merit. Is it 2. Social mobility was very limited? Is it 3. Status was determined by education? Or is it 4. Impact on daily lives of people was minimal? The answer is 2. Social mobility was very, very limited. In India you have a caste system. Well, untouchable is never, they're never gonna be up there in their social system. And revolutionary, the state system, 3 states, which didn't pay anything, didn't pay any taxes. One of the reasons for the French Revolution. The clergy and nobility were the top estates in France. And if you're a peasant, you had no chance to become a noble. Or, get into the clerk, become a noble. I'm pretty sure if you're a peasant, you never had that much of a chance to become a really, really, so to speak, really important priest. So it was limited. It was limited means not impossible, but limited. Social mobility was limited. So, 48. Question 48. Opium War, 1839 through 1842, Taiping Rebellion, 1850s to 1864, Boxer Rebellion, which you got enough for the Regents, 1889 through 1901. Is it 1, spread of communism in China and Korea? Right away you should cross it out because the question has nothing to do with, the answer has nothing to do with the question. Is it 2, growing concerns about influence of the West in China? Yes. Many people in China didn't like the growing influence of the West, whether it was selling opium or domination of their economy, or so forth. They didn't like that. So the answer is 2. And 3 and 4, Rome, alliance formed between Vietnam and China, or increased expansion of civil and political rights in China. The answer is 2. Easy question, easy answer. Let's move on, guys. Question number 49. Forced famine in Ukraine from 1932 through 1933 was a direct result of, is it 1, Tsar Nicholas's involvement in World War I? Absolutely not. Is it 2, Vladimir Lenin's new economic policy? New economic policy was Lenin's policy of implementing elements of capitalism, but it has nothing to do with the forced famine in Ukraine. Is it 3, Joseph Stalin's collectivization? Absolutely right. He wanted to collect as much agriculture as possible, and it was planned, and they didn't really care that much. Soviet government didn't really care that much about the people in that region. So forced collectivization, and 4 has nothing to do with it. Nikita Khrushchev's removed from power. Alright, so let's talk about question number 50. We have 3 quotes. River of sorrow flows again. Thousands missing after Huanghe overflows. Huanghe is in China. So even before reading the question, I know it has to do with China. Overall, 10 million reported homeless after 1931 flooding. Let's see, these newspaper headlines describe the effects of geography on people. Or is it 1, China, 2, Japan, 3, India, or 4, Vietnam? It's China because it's Huanghe. Yeah, it's China. When you see Huanghe on the regions, it's China. That's the river that flows in China. Easy question, easy answer. Alright, so good luck, guys. So, I really apologize it took me that long to post a review for Regents, but I'm back. I think I am. So, I would like to wish you guys good luck on your Regents exam. It's a really easy exam. So, I will try to post my videos a lot sooner since another Regents is coming up. And the next set of videos, well, the next video is going to be on the thematic essay, and followed up by the DBQ part of the Regents, most likely. Alright, so good luck, guys. And once again, sorry it took me that long. You know, half of that review was actually recorded back in March, where I was close to posting it, but then I had other things where I had to stop. But my schedule is a lot lighter now, and I can focus on this stuff once again. So I recorded the last part of this review today. So good luck, guys, and new videos coming up.